Caitlin Reynolds, 34, discovers her estranged family attempting to gain access to her newly inherited house by manipulating her elderly neighbor. She catches the mid-move with a rental truck full of furniture outside her property, while she was supposedly away on business. Her sister's cruel words from 5 years ago echo in her mind. "You don't even have a family anymore, so stop pretending you do." Ironically, this same family now claims they're entitled to her property because families should help family in need. If you've ever felt that knife twist of betrayal from the very people who should have your back, this story might feel all too familiar. I still remember standing there, keys in hand, watching my so-called family try to commandeer my home like I didn't even exist. Before I tell you how this nightmare unfolded and the justice that eventually came, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If family drama and sweet karma are your thing, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. Growing up in Portland, I believed we were the perfect family. Our middle-class home on Maple Street wasn't fancy, but it was filled with laughter and what I thought was love. My mother, Evelyn, worked as a nurse at the local hospital. My father, Richard, ran a moderately successful construction business. My older sister, Madison, was the family golden child, and my younger brother, Connor, was the baby everyone adored. I was the middle child, the peacekeeper, the one who tried to make everyone happy. The cracks in our family foundation weren't obvious at first. Looking back, I can see the small fractures that would eventually shatter everything. My father's business began struggling when I was 17. The 2008 recession hit us hard, and within months, Reynolds Construction was filing for bankruptcy. Dad changed after that. The jovial man who used to swing me around the living room became distant, drowning his failures in whiskey most nights. "Your father is just going through a rough patch," Mom would say when I expressed concern. "It's our job to support him, not criticize." But support wasn't enough. The fights between my parents escalated, usually about money. Mom started picking up extra shifts at the hospital, coming home exhausted and resentful. Dad's drinking worsened. Madison, then in college, rarely came home, claiming she needed to focus on studies. In reality, she was avoiding the battlefield our home had become. By my senior year of high school, divorce was inevitable. I remember the night they told us. Connor was 15, still young enough to cry openly. Madison, home for the weekend from Portland State, immediately sided with Mom. "How could you do this to us?" she screamed at Dad, while Mom stood by with a satisfied expression that chilled me. I stayed silent, understanding there were no winners in this war. The divorce was finalized 3 months before I left for college. I chose a school 4 hours away, needing distance from the toxicity. Mom got the house and primary custody of Connor. Dad moved into a small apartment across town, promising to stay involved in our lives. Those promises, like so many others, evaporated quickly. While I was away at college studying business with a focus on real estate, the family dynamic shifted dramatically. Mom transformed from the tired but caring nurse into someone I barely recognized. Her bitterness about the divorce consumed her. She spoke poorly of Dad to anyone who would listen, including Connor, who absorbed every word. Madison, always Mom's favorite, became her confidant and ally. They were eerily similar, both beautiful, charismatic, and skilled at emotional manipulation. Madison dropped out of college after 2 years, claiming she wanted to pursue other opportunities. Those opportunities never materialized into anything substantial, but Mom defended her every decision. "Your sister is an entrepreneur at heart," she would tell me during our increasingly uncomfortable phone calls. Not everyone needs a degree to be successful. I graduated with honors and secured a position with a respected real estate firm in Portland. Moving back was a difficult decision, but I felt responsibility toward my family despite our strained relationships. Connor was starting college by then, following Madison's footsteps to Portland State, his tuition partially covered by my financial support. That's when the pattern became clear. Every family gathering turned into a subtle shakedown. Madison needed money for a car repair. Connor's textbooks were unexpectedly expensive. Mom's roof was leaking. Dad, now barely in the picture, occasionally surfaced to ask for loans he never repaid. I helped when I could, establishing boundaries that were constantly tested. As my career advanced and my financial situation improved, the requests increased in frequency and amount. Madison, at 28, decided she wanted to open a boutique downtown. She had no business plan, no experience in retail, and no savings. "I need $25,000 for startup costs," she announced during a Sunday dinner at Mom's house 5 years ago. "You can afford it. Your commission on that waterfront property last month was twice that." I'd worked 60-hour weeks for months to close that deal. The commission was substantial, yes, but I'd earmarked it for a down payment on my own home, something I'd been working toward for years. "I can't give you that much money, Madison. Maybe I could help you develop a business plan and approach a bank for a proper loan." The temperature in the room dropped instantly. Mom put down her fork with a clatter. Connor stared at his plate. Madison's face contorted with rage. "After everything this family has done for you? You're really going to be that selfish? What exactly has this family done for me?" The words slipped out before I could stop them, years of frustration bubbling to the surface. "I've been supporting everyone since I graduated. I helped with Connor's tuition. I paid for your car repairs 3 times this year alone." Mom stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "How dare you throw that in our faces? That's what family does. We help each other." "No, that's what I do. When was the last time any of you helped me?" The argument escalated quickly. Years of resentment poured out from all sides. Madison called me selfish and entitled. Connor accused me of thinking I was better than everyone. Mom delivered the final blow. "You've changed, Caitlin. Money has made you cold. If you can't be there for your family when we need you, then maybe you're not really part of this family anymore." Madison nodded in agreement. "You don't even have a family anymore, so stop pretending you do." I left that night with tears streaming down my face, their words cutting deeper than they could possibly know. That was the last time I set foot in my mother's house. The last time I was in the same room with all of them. 5 years of silence followed, broken only by Connor's occasional text messages when he needed something. During those 5 years, I built a life for myself. I excelled at work, making senior agent within 3 years. I cultivated friendships that became my chosen family. Rachel, whom I met at a local business networking event, became the sister I wished I'd had. Thomas, a lawyer who helped with a complicated property closing, became a trusted friend and occasional dinner companion. I maintained contact with only one blood relative, my father's sister, Aunt Patricia. She had distanced herself from the family years before, labeled as difficult by my mother. In reality, she had simply refused to be manipulated. We met for coffee every few months, sharing stories and building a genuine relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Aunt Patricia never married or had children. She lived alone in a beautiful craftsman house in Laurelhurst, one of Portland's most desirable neighborhoods. She worked as a librarian until retirement, living modestly but investing wisely. We never discussed money. Our conversations centered around books, travel, and occasionally family history. The good parts, before everything fell apart. When Aunt Patricia passed away peacefully in her sleep at 78, I grieved deeply for the woman who had shown me what unconditional love actually meant. I was shocked when her lawyer contacted me about the will. Patricia had left me everything, most significantly, her house, worth approximately $850,000 in Portland's booming market. "She wanted you to have it, Mr. Harmon," her attorney, told me during the reading. "She said you were the only one who saw her for who she was, not what you could get from her." I moved into the house 2 months later, after settling the estate. The 1920s craftsman with its original woodwork, stained glass windows, and wraparound porch felt like home immediately. For the first time in my adult life, I felt settled, at peace, like I finally had solid ground beneath my feet. That peace lasted exactly 3 months and 17 days. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a Facebook friend request from Madison. 5 years of silence, and suddenly she wanted to reconnect through social media? I ignored it initially, assuming she'd clicked my profile by accident. Then came a text message from Connor. "Hey sis, long time no talk. How's life treating you? As if we'd simply lost touch, rather than them explicitly telling me I wasn't family anymore. I responded politely but briefly, curious about this sudden interest in my existence. The voicemail from my mother arrived 3 days later. "Caitlin, it's your mother. I think it's time we put the past behind us. Family is family after all. Call me back when you get this."
No apology.
No acknowledgement of the hurt they'd caused. Just an expectation that I would eagerly welcome them back into my life. Still, a small part of me, the part that still yearned for the family I thought I had growing up, wondered if reconciliation was possible. I agreed to meet Madison for coffee at a neutral location downtown. She looked the same, perhaps a bit more worn around the edges. Her designer purse was scuffed, her manicure chipped. Small details that my realtors I couldn't help but notice. "You look great," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "Success obviously agrees with you." "Thanks. How have you been?" "Oh, ups and downs. Derek and I got married 3 years ago. We have 2 kids now. Emma is 2 and Jackson is 11 months. I hadn't known she was married, let alone a mother. The realization of how completely I'd been cut out of their lives stung, despite everything. "Congratulations. That's wonderful. Yeah, they're great kids. Super smart like their aunt." She smiled, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I resisted the urge to pull away. "Mom really misses you. She talks about you all the time." "That's surprising." Madison had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Look, things got heated that night. Things were said that shouldn't have been. We were all under a lot of stress. You told me I didn't have a family anymore." She winced. I was angry. You know how I get when I'm angry. I say things I don't mean. The conversation continued in this vein for nearly an hour. Madison expertly dancing around any real apology while dropping hints about their current situation. Derek had been between jobs for a while. Their apartment was not ideal for growing children. Mom was having some health issues but didn't want to burden me with the details. I left feeling unsettled, my instinct screaming caution while my heart whispered about second chances. Over the next 2 weeks, the contact increased. Connor invited me to lunch. Mom called twice more. Even Madison's husband Derek, whom I'd never met, sent a friendly text introducing himself. Then came the news that I needed to travel to Seattle for a week-long real estate conference and property tour. I'd be representing our firm at several high-profile networking events, an important opportunity one couldn't miss. Mrs. Finley, my 78-year-old neighbor who had been friends with Aunt Patricia for decades, agreed to collect my mail and keep an eye on the house while I was gone. "Don't you worry about a thing, dear," she assured me, accepting the spare key I offered for emergencies only. "Patricia and I looked out for each other for 40 years. I'm happy to continue the tradition with you." I left for Seattle on a Monday morning, my mind focused on the business opportunities ahead rather than my family's sudden reappearance in my life. The conference was productive, connections were made, potential deals were discussed. Everything was going according to plan until Wednesday afternoon, when my phone rang during a breakout session. "Caitlin? It's Mrs. Finley. I'm sorry to bother you at your conference, but something strange is happening at your house." I stepped into the hallway, my heart racing. "What's going on?" "Well, your family members came by asking for the spare key. They said you knew they were coming to drop off some things while you were away." My blood ran cold. "My family? Who exactly?" "Your sister Madison, I believe. And a young man who said he was your brother. They were very insistent that you had asked them to bring some furniture by today specifically." "Mrs. Finley, I didn't ask them to do anything. Did you give them the key?"
No, dear."
Something didn't feel right about it. Patricia always told me to be careful about her family. Said they only came around when they wanted something. Relief washed over me. "You did the right thing. Please don't give anyone access to my house, no matter what they say." "Of course not." "But Caitlin," they seemed very determined. "They said they'd come back tomorrow with proof that you knew about this arrangement." I ended the call and immediately booked a flight back to Portland, scheduled to arrive early the next morning. I sent apology emails to the conference organizers, claiming a family emergency. Technically not a lie. Sleep evaded me that night, my mind racing with possibilities, none of them good. The flight landed at 8:43 a.m. I took an Uber directly from the airport to my house, anxiety building with every mile. As we turned onto my street, I saw it, a large moving truck parked in my driveway, its back door open to reveal furniture and boxes. A man I didn't recognize was carrying a coffee table toward my front porch, where more boxes were stacked. Madison stood in the driveway, clipboard in hand, directing two movers where to place things. She was so focused on her task that she didn't notice my arrival until I was 10 feet away, suitcase still in hand. What the hell is going on here? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Madison jumped, her clipboard clattering to the ground. Caitlin, you're supposed to be in Seattle until Monday.
Clearly.
Is that why you chose now to move into my house? Because you thought I wouldn't be here to stop you. Her face flushed, but she recovered quickly. Don't be dramatic. We're just bringing over a few things. Mom thought it would be nice to surprise you with some family heirlooms. Family heirlooms? In a moving truck? Try again, Madison. Before she could respond, the front door opened and my mother emerged, looking startled to see me. Behind her, Connor appeared in the doorway, his arms full of what looked like measuring tape and notepads. What are you doing inside my house? I demanded, moving toward the porch. How did you get in there? Mom attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Caitlin, sweetheart, calm down. There's a perfectly reasonable explanation for all of this.
I'm listening.
Well, when we heard about Patricia leaving you this beautiful house, we were so happy for you. But it seemed silly for you to rattle around in this big place all alone when we could help each other out. Help each other out, I repeated flatly.
Yes.
Madison and Derek's lease is up, and you know how expensive Portland rentals have become. Mom's having some health issues and could use family nearby. It just made sense for us to move in together. One big, happy family, just like you always wanted. The audacity was breathtaking. I pushed past her into my own house, finding the living room in disarray. Some of my furniture had been pushed against walls. In the kitchen, my carefully organized cabinets were open, dishes rearranged to make room for unfamiliar cookware. Get out, I said quietly, turning to face them. All of you, get out of my house right now. Now, Caitlin, Mom began, her voice taking on the patronizing tone I remembered from childhood. I know this is a surprise, but if you think about it, I said get out. This is breaking and entering. This is my house, not yours. I never invited you here. I never agreed to anyone moving in. Connor stepped forward, hands raised placatingly. Sis, we thought you'd be happy. You always talked about wanting the family back together. That was before you all told me I wasn't family anymore. Before 5 years of silence. Before you tried to move into my house behind my back. A minivan pulled up behind the moving truck, and Derek stepped out, looking confused. 2 small children were strapped into car seats in the back. What's going on? He called. Why aren't the movers taking things inside? Madison hurried over to him, speaking urgently in hushed tones. His expression darkened as he looked over at me. This is insane, I said, pulling out my phone. I'm calling the police. You would call the police on your own family? Mom's voice rose dramatically. After everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Besides tell me I wasn't part of the family anymore? Besides try to steal my house? We're not stealing anything, Madison interjected, rejoining us on the porch. Family helps family. That's what Patricia would have wanted. The mention of my aunt's name was the final straw. Don't you dare speak about Patricia. You never visited her. You never called her. You didn't attend her funeral. You have no idea what she would have wanted. She was our aunt too, Connor mumbled. Get out now, or I'm calling the police. This is your only warning.
They didn't believe me.
Perhaps they thought family loyalty would ultimately win out, or that I wouldn't want to create a scene in the neighborhood. They were wrong on both counts. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived, responding to my report of trespassers refusing to leave my property. The family drama that unfolded on my front lawn that morning would have been mortifying if I'd had any emotional investment left in these people. Mom cried theatrical tears about her ungrateful daughter. Madison alternated between rage and fake concern about my mental state. Connor mainly looked uncomfortable, while Derek loaded their children back into the minivan, clearly wanting no part of this public spectacle. The officers, to their credit, remained professional throughout. They verified my ownership of the property, examined my identification, and firmly but politely instructed my family to remove their belongings from my property immediately. "But where are we supposed to go?" Madison wailed, gesturing toward the moving truck. "We've already given notice on our apartment." "That's not Ms. Reynolds' problem, ma'am," the female officer stated calmly. "This is her private property, and she has the right to determine who enters it." I stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching as they reluctantly began loading their boxes back into the truck. The reality of what they had attempted to do was still sinking in. They had planned to move into my house without permission. They had tried to manipulate my elderly neighbor. They had somehow gained entry to my home while I was away. As the truck finally pulled away from the curb, Madison rolled down the passenger window and shouted, "This isn't over, Caitlin. Family is forever, whether you like it or not." The irony of her words wasn't lost on me. 5 years ago, I wasn't family. Now, suddenly, family was forever when they needed something from me. I thanked the officers, closed and locked my front door, and sank to the floor, trembling with a mixture of anger, shock, and an odd sense of relief. They had shown their true colors in a way that was impossible to misinterpret. Any lingering doubts I had about cutting them from my life were gone. What I didn't realize then was that this was only the beginning. My family wasn't going to give up that easily. Not when they had already invested so much in their plan to take over my home. And possibly much more. The confrontation on my front lawn marked the beginning of what I now refer to as the siege. Having failed in their initial attempt to move in while I was away, my family shifted tactics. Instead of backing off, they doubled down, seemingly determined to wear me down through persistence and manipulation. It started with phone calls, constant, unrelenting attempts to contact me from different family members. When I blocked their numbers, they used other phones. When I stopped answering unknown numbers, they left voicemails. The messages ranged from tearful apologies to thinly veiled threats, all centered around one core theme. I was being selfish, unreasonable, and cruel to my poor family in their time of need. "Caitlin, it's your mother. I raised you better than this. After everything I sacrificed for you children, this is how you repay me? By leaving your own family homeless. Hey sis, Connor here. Look, things got out of hand, but you didn't have to embarrass everyone in front of a whole neighborhood. Mom's really upset. At least call her back.
This is Madison.
I hope you're happy knowing your niece and nephew are sleeping on an air mattress in Derek's parents' basement because their cold-hearted aunt cares more about having a giant house all to herself than helping family." I saved every message, a decision that would prove wise later. For now, though, I simply tried to maintain my normal routine while processing the shock of what had happened. The first Monday after the incident, I returned to work, trying to focus on my clients and listings rather than my personal drama. That plan derailed quickly when my mother showed up at my office around noon. "Caitlin Reynolds, please," I heard her telling the receptionist as I returned from a client meeting. "I'm her mother. It's an emergency." I froze in the hallway, watching as Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. She had always been theatrical, but this performance deserved an award. She wore a cardigan I'd never seen before that somehow made her look frilier, more vulnerable. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was slightly disheveled. "Mrs. Reynolds," our receptionist Alicia said gently, "if you could take a seat, I'll see if Caitlin is available." "It's all right, Alicia," I said, stepping forward. "I'll handle this." My mother's expression shifted rapidly from distress to triumph, then back to calculated concern as she realized others were watching. "Caitlin, sweetheart. Thank goodness. I've been so worried." I led her to a small conference room, closing the door firmly behind us. This is my workplace. Whatever you're doing, it needs to stop now. I wouldn't have to come to your workplace if you'd answer your phone, she countered. I'm worried about you, living all alone in that big house, cutting yourself off from family. I'm not alone. I have friends. I have colleagues. I have a life that was going perfectly well until you all decided to insert yourselves back into it. She waved away my words as if they were irrelevant. Friends aren't family, Caitlin. You need us, whether you realize it or not. Patricia's death has obviously affected you deeply. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. Now please leave before you damage my professional reputation. That's all you care about, isn't it? Your career, your money, your house. What about people? What about relationships? Relationships are built on respect and trust, neither of which you've shown me. The conversation deteriorated from there. By the time I finally convinced her to leave, several of my colleagues had gathered in the hallway, pretending not to eavesdrop on the increasingly heated exchange. My boss, Martin, pulled me aside afterward, his expression concerned. Everything okay, Caitlin? Family troubles. I gave him the abbreviated version, emphasizing that I was handling it and it wouldn't affect my work. He seemed satisfied with that explanation, but I could tell the incident had sparked office gossip.
Great.
Just what I needed. The workplace visit was only the beginning. The next day, Madison accidentally ran into me at my favorite coffee shop. The day after that, Connor showed up at the gym where I had a membership. They were everywhere, suddenly, as if they'd been tracking my routines for weeks. Perhaps they had. The most disturbing incident came 10 days after the moving truck fiasco. I arrived home from work to find Madison's 2 children sitting on my front porch, a small suitcase beside them. Emma, the older one, looked up at me with solemn eyes. Are you Aunt Caitlin? Mommy said to wait here for you. My heart sank. Where is your mommy, sweetheart? She had to go do errands. She said you would watch us for a little while. A little while turned out to be 5 hours. No note. No way to contact Madison as she wasn't answering her phone. 2 confused, eventually hungry and tired children who barely knew me deposited on my doorstep like packages. I made them dinner, found some paper and crayons for drawing, and tried to make them comfortable while silently seething at Madison's irresponsibility. When she finally returned, she acted as if she'd done nothing wrong. Thanks for watching them. Wasn't it nice to spend time with your niece and nephew? They've been dying to get to know their aunt. Don't ever do that again, I told her, my voice low so the children wouldn't hear. This was manipulation, using your own kids as pawns. She had the audacity to look offended. I had an emergency job interview. Derek's working a double shift. We don't have money for babysitters right now. Then you call and ask. You don't abandon your children on someone's porch without warning. Oh, please, it's not abandonment. It's family helping family. That phrase again. Family helping family. As if it were a magical incantation that justified any behavior, no matter how inappropriate or inconsiderate. The incident that finally pushed me to take legal action occurred 3 weeks after the moving truck confrontation. I was awakened at 2:17 a.m. by pounding on my front door. Disoriented and frightened, I checked my security camera feed, newly installed after the break-in, to see Connor swaying on my porch, clearly intoxicated. Caitlin, open up. We need to talk. He shouted, loud enough to wake the neighborhood. I called the police rather than opening the door, watching through the camera as he continued pounding and shouting. When he started trying doorknobs and rattling windows, my fear turned to anger. This was intimidation, plain and simple. The police arrived quickly, finding Connor attempting to force open a side window. They detained him, and I filed a report, my hands shaking as I signed the paperwork. The officer asked if I wanted to press charges for attempted breaking and entering. He's my brother, I said, the words sticking in my throat. Family issues can be the most complicated ones, ma'am, the officer replied kindly. But what he was doing wasn't legal, family or not. I declined to press charges that night, a decision I would later reconsider. Connor was escorted off my property with a warning, and I was left once again to deal with the emotional aftermath of my family's increasingly desperate behavior. The next day, I called Thomas, my lawyer friend, and explained the situation. His advice was straightforward and exactly what I needed to hear. You need a restraining order, Caitlin. This pattern of behavior is escalating. The unexpected visits, the workplace confrontation, leaving children without permission, and now a middle-of-the-night attempted break-in? These aren't the actions of people who have your best interests at heart.
I knew he was right.
As much as some small part of me still longed for the family I thought I had growing up, I needed to protect myself. The restraining order was granted within days, based on the evidence I'd been carefully documenting. The voicemails, the police reports, the security camera footage. My family was legally prohibited from contacting me or coming within 100 yards of my home or workplace. The relief I felt was immense, but tinged with sadness. It shouldn't have come to this. Families were supposed to support each other, not terrorize each other. For a few weeks after the restraining order was served, everything went quiet. No calls, no unexpected visits, no manipulation attempts. I began to relax, thinking perhaps they had finally gotten the message. I should have known better. They hadn't given up. They had simply retreated to regroup and plan their next move, one that would prove far more calculated and potentially devastating than anything they'd tried before. When I think back on that period of false security, I marvel at my own naivety. I believed that legal barriers would stop people who had already demonstrated they had no respect for normal boundaries. I thought the worst was over, when in reality, I had yet to discover just how far they were willing to go to get what they wanted. I've experienced a lot of challenging situations in my life, but nothing compares to realizing the depths to which your own family will sink to take advantage of you. The quiet period wasn't the end of their campaign. It was merely the calm before a storm that would test the limits of my resolve and force me to confront truths I'd been avoiding for years. The restraining order seemed to work for about 3 weeks. 3 blissful weeks of silence during which I could focus on rebuilding my sense of security and privacy. I changed all my locks, installed a comprehensive security system, and began therapy to process the emotional trauma of my family's betrayal. I was starting to feel like myself again, reclaiming the peace I'd felt when I first moved into Aunt Patricia's house. Then the indirect attacks began. First came the rumors. Through mutual acquaintances and old family friends, I learned that my mother and sister were spreading stories about me, each more outlandish than the last. According to them, I had suffered a mental breakdown after Aunt Patricia's death. I was unstable and paranoid, imagining threats where none existed. The restraining order was characterized as a symptom of my deteriorating mental health rather than a necessary protection against their harassment. I ran into Evelyn at the grocery store, my former high school teacher Mrs. Bennett told me during a chance encounter. "She's so worried about you, dear. She said you've been acting erratically since your aunt passed. Is there anything I can do to help?" Similar conversations happened repeatedly, each one revealing another thread of the narrative my family was weaving. I was portrayed alternately as mentally ill, dangerously selfish, or under the influence of toxic friends who had turned me against my loving family. Most disturbing were the claims about Aunt Patricia's inheritance. According to my family's version, Patricia had promised the house to all of us collectively. I had somehow manipulated the situation, either by controlling Patricia in her final years or by interfering with her will. The details varied depending on who was telling the story, but the conclusion remained consistent. I had stolen a family inheritance that rightfully belonged to all of us. "You know I'd never believe such nonsense," Rachel assured me over dinner one evening. "But they're being very convincing to people who don't know the whole story. Madison even cried when she told my cousin about how you took advantage of Patricia's confusion near the end." I sighed, pushing my barely touched meal away. Patricia wasn't confused. She was sharp until the very end. The lawyer can confirm that. I know. But they're creating a narrative that makes sense to outsiders. The greedy daughter who abandoned her struggling family, then swooped in to steal an inheritance. People love to believe the worst, especially about successful women. She was right, and that realization made me feel sick. My carefully built reputation, both personal and professional, was being systematically undermined. Clients began canceling meetings with vague excuses. Invitations to social events dwindled. Even some of my colleagues seemed to view me differently, their interactions becoming more formal, less friendly. The family had found a way around the restraining order. They couldn't contact me directly, but they could poison the well of my community against me. I was in the middle of explaining this latest development to Thomas during our weekly dinner when my phone buzzed with a notification from my security system. Someone was at my front door. I checked the camera feed to see Mr. Harmon, Aunt Patricia's lawyer, standing on my porch, looking troubled. "I need to take this," I told Thomas, already moving to answer the door. Mr. Harmon's expression was grave as I invited him in. "I apologize for the unannounced visit, Caitlin, but I thought you should know about this immediately. Your family has been contacting my office repeatedly, making some rather serious allegations." My stomach dropped. What kind of allegations? They're challenging the validity of Patricia's will. They claim she wasn't of sound mind when she made her final arrangements. They're also suggesting you exerted undue influence over her decisions. That's ridiculous. You met with her regularly. You know she was completely lucid. He nodded, removing his glasses to clean them, a nervous habit I'd noticed during the will reading. Of course I know that. And my notes and the proper execution of the will should make their challenge unsuccessful. But they're being quite persistent and, unfortunately, will contests can be messy and protracted even when they have no merit. They're doing this to wear me down, I said quietly, the realization settling heavily in my chest. They think if they make my life difficult enough, I'll give in just to make it stop. Mr. Harmon replaced his glasses, his expression sympathetic. That would be my assessment as well. For what it's worth, I don't believe they have a legitimate case. But they can certainly create complications and stress in the meantime. After he left, I explained the situation to Thomas, whose legal expertise was in corporate law rather than estate matters, but who nonetheless understood the implications. "They're escalating," he said, his voice tight with concern. "This isn't just about getting access to the house anymore. They're trying to take it from you completely." The next morning brought another unpleasant surprise. My boss called me into his office as soon as I arrived at work. "Caitlin, I've received some concerning calls about you," Martin said, looking uncomfortable. Normally, I wouldn't give much credence to anonymous reports, but the volume is becoming difficult to ignore. "Anonymous reports? About what?" "Claims that you're unstable, that you've been mistreating family members, that you fraudulently obtained property. Obviously, these allegations don't align with the Caitlin Reynolds I know, but I need to ask if there's something going on that might be affecting our firm's reputation." I took a deep breath, reminding myself that losing my temper would only reinforce the unstable narrative. Instead, I calmly explained the situation, showing Martin the restraining order documentation and offering to connect him with Mr. Harmon to verify the legitimacy of my inheritance. "I'm handling it," I assured him. "But I want you to know that these claims are part of a harassment campaign. My family is retaliating because I wouldn't let them move into my house without permission." Martin seemed relieved by my composure and transparency. "That's good enough for me. I just needed to hear your side. For what it's worth, I think you're handling a difficult situation with remarkable professionalism." His support meant more than he could know, a rare bright spot in the increasingly dark landscape of my life. But even with Martin's backing, the work environment grew tense. Clients continued to cancel. Colleagues whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. The rumors were doing exactly what my family intended, isolating me, damaging my credibility, making me vulnerable. The stress began affecting my health. I developed insomnia, lying awake for hours worrying about what new attack might come next. I lost weight, food turning to ash in my mouth. My normally perfect professional appearance began to slip, dark circles under my eyes, clothes hanging looser on my frame. In my more paranoid moments, I wondered if this physical deterioration was playing into their hands, making me look exactly like the unstable person they were describing to others. "You can't keep going like this," Rachel insisted after I nearly fell asleep at her dinner table one evening. They're destroying you, and you're letting them. What choice do I have? I can't stop them from talking to people. No, but you can fight back. Not just legally, though that's important too. You need to reclaim your narrative. And you need to find out exactly what they're planning. She was right. I had been playing defense, reacting to each new attack rather than getting ahead of the situation. It was time to be proactive, to stop the siege before it broke through my remaining defenses. The next day, I took a personal day from work and met with Thomas and a private investigator he recommended. It felt extreme, but the situation had become extreme. If my family was willing to challenge a legitimate will and spread vicious rumors to get what they wanted, I needed to know what else they might be capable of. I needed to understand the full scope of what I was facing. Find out everything. I instructed the investigator, a former police detective named Michael Blake. Their financial situation, their movements, their communications, if possible. I need to know what I'm dealing with. Understood, he replied, making notes. Family situations can get ugly fast. Best to have all the information. As I drove home that evening, emotionally exhausted but feeling like I had finally taken constructive action, I couldn't help reflecting on how drastically my life had changed in just a few months. From peaceful contentment in my inherited home to this ongoing nightmare of family betrayal and manipulation. The house that had felt like such a blessing now sometimes felt like a curse, the catalyst for revealing the true nature of my family relationships. But even in my darkest moments, I never considered giving in to their demands. This wasn't just about property anymore. It was about standing up to years of manipulation and exploitation. It was about breaking the cycle of emotional abuse that had defined our family dynamics for too long. What I didn't realize then was how close I was to uncovering the true depths of their deception. The private investigator would soon deliver information that would shift the entire paradigm of our conflict, revealing that the house was just the beginning of what they wanted from me, and that their desperation stemmed from places far darker than I had imagined. As this family drama has unfolded, I've realized how many others have experienced similar betrayals. If you're watching this and relating to any part of my story, know that you're not alone. The pain of family betrayal cuts deeper than any other kind. While I take a moment to collect myself before continuing, I'd love to know if you've ever had family members try to take advantage of your success. Drop a comment below, and let's support each other through these difficult experiences. And if you want to see how this story ultimately resolves, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the conclusion. The call from Michael Blake came just 3 days after our initial meeting. His efficiency was impressive, though the urgency in his voice suggested the information he'd uncovered couldn't wait. "We need to meet in person," he said. "Today, if possible." We arranged to meet at a small coffee shop in a neighborhood far from my usual haunts, somewhere my family wouldn't think to look for me. Michael arrived with a thick folder tucked under his arm, his expression grim. "Your family's financial situation is significantly worse than they've let on," he began, opening the folder to reveal bank statements, credit reports, and legal documents. "Your sister Madison and her husband Derek have accumulated gambling debts totaling nearly $120,000. They've been borrowing from high-interest lenders to cover minimum payments, but they're underwater and sinking fast." I stared at the documents, trying to process this information. Madison had mentioned financial difficulties, but gambling debt? That was unexpected. What about my mother? Michael flipped to another section of the folder. Evelyn Reynolds refinanced her house 3 times in the past 4 years. She's pulled out nearly all the equity and is 3 months behind on payments. The bank has initiated pre-foreclosure proceedings. And Connor? 2 DUIs in the past year, resulting in significant legal fees. He also has an ex-girlfriend who filed for child support for a 2-year-old son. Paternity was confirmed, and he's already $8,000 in arrears. I sat back, stunned. Connor has a child? I had no idea. "There's more," Michael continued, his tone becoming even more serious. "During my investigation, I spoke with several acquaintances of your family members under the pretext of being a financial advisor. Multiple people mention that your family has been telling everyone they're moving into Patricia's house. Not visiting, not staying temporarily. Moving in permanently. This aligned with what I'd already witnessed, but Michael wasn't finished. Yesterday, I managed to speak with Jenna Miller, who worked with Madison at her last job. According to Jenna, Madison has been planning this move for months, ever since learning about your inheritance. She specifically told Jenna they intended to establish residency in your house. Establish residency? What does that mean exactly? In legal terms, it means creating a situation where they would be considered tenants rather than guests. Oregon law provides significant protections for tenants, making eviction a lengthy and complicated process even when no rent has been paid. If they had successfully moved in and established residency, you might have been forced to go through formal eviction proceedings to remove them. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth as I absorbed this information. Their plan had been more calculated than I'd realized. They hadn't just opportunistically tried to move in. They had researched and planned a strategic occupation of my home that would be difficult to reverse once accomplished. "There's one more thing you should see," Michael said, pulling out a small evidence bag containing what looked like copies of keys. "These were found in Derek's car when I was conducting surveillance. They appear to be copies of your house keys." My blood ran cold. How would they have gotten copies of my keys? That's unclear. But it suggests they may have had access to your house before the moving truck incident. After meeting with Michael, I drove straight home, my mind racing. If they had copies of my keys, they could have been entering my house while I was at work. The thought made my skin crawl. How long had this been going on? What had they done inside my home? I pulled into my driveway and sat for a moment, staring at the house that had become the center of this nightmare. Then I noticed something out of place. My recycling bin had been moved from its usual spot beside the garage. It was collection day, but the truck had already come through our neighborhood that morning. Following a hunch, I got out and checked the bin. Inside, buried beneath junk mail and empty containers, I found a printout of a legal article titled, "Establishing Squatters' Rights in Oregon." Several passages were highlighted, including information about adverse possession and tenant rights. They had been in my house.
Today,
While I was meeting with Michael, I called a locksmith immediately, arranging for emergency service to change every lock in the house. While waiting for them to arrive, I conducted a thorough search of my home, looking for any other evidence of intrusion or tampering. In my home office, I discovered a file folder missing from my desk, one containing insurance documents related to the house. In the guest bedroom, the closet door was slightly ajar, though I distinctly remembered closing it the previous day. Small signs, easily overlooked individually, but collectively painting a disturbing picture of ongoing unauthorized access. The locksmith arrived within the hour and changed every external lock, providing me with the only keys to the new locks. I also called my security company to upgrade my system, adding interior motion sensors and cameras. The sense of violation was profound, but at least I was taking concrete steps to protect myself. The next morning, I visited Mrs. Finley, hoping she might have noticed any suspicious activity around my house while I was away. "Oh dear," she said when I explained my concerns, her lined face creasing with worry. "I should have told you sooner, but I didn't want to alarm you unnecessarily." "Told me what, Mrs. Finley?" "Your sister, Madison, is it? She's been coming by regularly. Always when your car is gone. I assumed you knew about it. She's been coming to my house when I'm not home? How often?" "At least twice a week for the past month or so. Sometimes with her husband, sometimes with your mother. They always have some explanation about dropping things off for you or picking up items you requested."
my heart sank.
"Mrs. Finley, I never asked them to drop off or pick up anything. They've been lying to you." Her expression shifted from concern to indignation. "Well, I never. They seemed so convincing. Especially your mother. She told me you were having some difficulties following your aunt's death. Said you sometimes forgot conversations or arrangements you'd made." The manipulation was breathtaking in its audacity. They had been systematically setting up a narrative of my mental instability, not just with acquaintances and colleagues, but with my own neighbor, likely hoping to use her as a witness if their residency plan resulted in legal proceedings. There's something else, Mrs. Finley added hesitantly. Last week, a real estate agent came by asking for you. When I said you were at work, she seemed confused. She said she had an appointment with the Reynolds family about listing the property. A real estate agent? Did you get her name or company? I believe her card is in my kitchen drawer. Just a moment. Mrs. Finley returned with a business card for Alicia Martinez, realtor. I recognized the name immediately. Alicia was a competitor from another agency whom I'd met at industry events. I called her from Mrs. Finley's phone, identifying myself and asking about the supposed appointment. Caitlin. Yes, I was quite confused when I visited your property last week. A woman claiming to be Evelyn Reynolds had called to discuss potentially listing the house. She said the family had inherited it collectively and was looking to sell quickly. When I arrived and no one was there, I assumed they had forgotten our appointment. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Not only had my family attempted to move in without permission, not only had they been entering my house secretly for weeks, but they had actually taken steps towards selling my house right out from under me. I thanked Alicia for the information and apologized for the confusion, explaining briefly that there had been a misunderstanding about the inheritance. After hanging up, I sat with Mrs. Finley, trying to process this latest revelation. I feel terrible, she said, patting my hand. Patricia always told me to be careful around your mother. Said she had a way of twisting situations to her advantage. I should have been more vigilant. It's not your fault, Mrs. Finley. They're very good at manipulation. They've had years of practice. After leaving Mrs. Finley's, I drove straight to Thomas's office, bypassing his secretary with a brief explanation about an emergency. He looked up from his desk, concern immediately crossing his face when he saw my expression. They've been planning to sell my house, I told him without preamble. They've been entering it without permission for weeks. They contacted a real estate agent pretending to have authority to list the property. Thomas's expression darkened. That's fraud. Criminal fraud. Not just a family dispute anymore. I know. And I'm done playing defense. I need to know all my legal options, not just for keeping them away from me, but for holding them accountable for what they've already done. We spent the next 2 hours discussing strategy, with Thomas occasionally consulting colleagues with expertise in criminal law and real estate fraud. By the time I left his office, I had a clear plan of action, one that would not only protect me going forward but potentially deliver consequences severe enough to end their campaign against me permanently. The most disturbing discovery, however, came that evening. As I was thoroughly cleaning my house, attempting to reclaim my space from their invasion, I found a small notebook wedged between the cushions of my living room sofa. It wasn't mine. The notebook contained lists, calculations, and notes in Madison's handwriting. Most were financial figures, calculations of the house's potential selling price, commission rates, how the proceeds might be divided. But on the final page was something that made my blood run cold. A crude timeline titled Caitlin Removal Plan. The timeline detailed steps already taken. Copy keys, scout house layout, contact agent for valuation, research residency requirements. But it also included future plans, move in essential items gradually, establish mail delivery, and most disturbingly, medication strategy with a question mark. What medication strategy could possibly mean in this context, I didn't want to imagine. But the implication was clear. Their plans might have extended beyond merely taking my house. They might have been plotting something far more sinister. I photographed every page of the notebook before placing it in a sealed bag as evidence. Then I called Michael Blake to report this new discovery. His response was immediate and grave. Don't stay in that house tonight. Go to a hotel or a friend's place. We don't know how far they're willing to go. I spent that night at Rachel's apartment, the notebook safely locked in her personal safe. Sleep evaded me as I grappled with the reality that my own family might have been plotting not just to steal my house, but potentially to harm me in the process. The next morning, with Rachel's unwavering support, I made a decision. It was time to stop reacting to my family's moves and start making my own. Time to gather all the evidence, build an irrefutable case, and take decisive action that would end their campaign once and for all. What began as a shocking discovery of family members trying to move into my house had evolved into something far darker, a coordinated conspiracy to defraud me, potentially endanger me, and steal what was rightfully mine. The time for half measures and restraint was over. My family had declared war, and I was finally ready to fight back with everything I had. The first step in my counterattack was comprehensive documentation. Every voicemail, every text message, every piece of evidence needed to be organized and preserved. Rachel helped me create a chronological record of all interactions with my family since Aunt Patricia's death, including dates, times, witnesses, and supporting evidence where available. Documentation is power, she reminded me as we worked late into the night. Especially when dealing with people who will lie and manipulate to get what they want. The security upgrades to my house were completed the next day, a sophisticated system with motion detection, 24/7 recording, and remote monitoring capabilities. Every entrance was covered, including windows and the previously vulnerable back door. I also hired a professional to sweep for listening devices or hidden cameras they might have planted during their unauthorized entries. My next stop was Mr. Harmon's office to discuss Aunt Patricia's will in greater detail, particularly any insights he might have about why she chose to leave everything to me rather than dividing it among family members. Patricia was very clear about her wishes, he assured me, pulling out his notes from their meetings. She updated her will 3 times in the 5 years before her death. The first version, drafted shortly after your family conflict began, actually did include small bequests to your mother and siblings. What changed? According to my notes, Patricia became concerned about their intentions. She mentioned that your mother had started calling her regularly after years of minimal contact. She found the sudden interest in her welfare suspicious, especially when these calls inevitably turned to discussions of Patricia's house and financial affairs. He flipped through his notebook, finding a specific entry. Here it is. October 12th, 3 years ago. Patricia said, Evelyn asked if I've updated my will recently, then suggested I should consider leaving the house to the family collectively since Caitlin is doing so well financially and doesn't need it. She was quite disturbed by the presumption. That sounds like my mother, I said grimly. The final version of the will, signed 8 months before her death, included very specific language about her reasons for leaving everything to you. She wanted to ensure her wishes couldn't be misinterpreted or successfully challenged. Mr. Harmon handed me a sealed envelope. Patricia also left this with me, to be given to you if anyone contested the will. I believe now is the appropriate time. Inside was a handwritten letter in Aunt Patricia's elegant script. My dear Caitlin, if you're reading this, then someone, likely your mother, is challenging my decision to leave my estate to you. I want you to know that this choice was made with complete clarity of mind and purpose. Your kindness toward me over the years has meant more than you know. You visited not out of obligation or expectation, but out of genuine affection. Our conversations about books, travel, and life were bright spots in my later years. I've watched you build your career through hard work and integrity, never asking for handouts or taking shortcuts. The independence you've shown in the face of family pressure is admirable. I've also observed your mother and siblings' behavior over the years. Their sudden interest in my welfare coincided suspiciously with my diagnosis, though I've told no one but you about my health concerns. The pattern is familiar, the same pattern that led me to distance myself from them years ago. This house has been my sanctuary. I want it to be yours now. A place where you can find the peace and stability your family never provided.
Do not let them take this from you.
Do not let them make you doubt yourself. With love and confidence. Patricia. Tears streamed down my face as I read her words. Even from beyond the grave, Aunt Patricia was looking out for me, understanding the family dynamics better than I had myself. This letter is powerful evidence of her intentions, Mr. Harmon said gently. Combined with my notes and the properly executed will, I believe any challenge will ultimately fail. but it may take time and be emotionally draining. I'm prepared for that, I assured him, carefully returning the letter to its envelope. I need one more thing from you, if possible. Documentation of any attempts my family has made to contact you about the will, especially any misrepresentations about their relationship with Patricia or claims about her mental state. He nodded. I'll have my assistant compile everything we have. I assume this is for potential legal action beyond just defending the will.
Yes.
What they've done goes beyond a simple inheritance dispute. Armed with Patricia's letter and the promise of additional documentation from Mr. Harmon, I moved to the next phase of my plan, building a legal case. Thomas had referred me to Catherine Walsh, an attorney specializing in estate fraud and family property disputes. What your family has attempted constitutes several criminal offenses, Catherine explained during our initial consultation. Breaking and entering, fraud, attempted conversion of property, possibly even conspiracy and elder abuse if they were manipulating Patricia before her death. I don't necessarily want to send them to jail, I admitted. I just want them to stop and face consequences for what they've done. Understanding your leverage is important, even if you choose not to use it fully, she replied. The threat of criminal charges can be a powerful motivator for a settlement that includes their permanent withdrawal from your life. Catherine advised me to continue gathering evidence while she prepared potential legal filings. The most compelling evidence would come from catching them in the act of attempting to enter my property again or making further misrepresentations about ownership. Based on what you've told me, they've been persistent and escalating. They're likely to make another attempt, especially if they believe you're vulnerable or away from home. This conversation led to the most audacious element of my counterplan, a deliberate sting operation. I would create the appearance of another business trip, making it known through channels my family might monitor that I would be away for several days. In reality, I would remain nearby, waiting for them to make their move. It's risky, Rachel argued when I explained the plan. What if they do something dangerous? That's why we'll have the police on standby, I assured her. And you'll be monitoring the security feeds remotely. If anything seems off, you can alert the officers immediately. Preparations took nearly 2 weeks. I dropped casual mentions of an upcoming conference in Chicago during conversations with colleagues who had connections to my family. I booked flights and a hotel that could be canceled without penalty. I arranged for visible rideshare pickups that would suggest departure and absence. Meanwhile, Catherine assembled a comprehensive legal dossier on my family's activities. Michael Blake continued his surveillance, documenting their movements and conversations when possible. Thomas reviewed everything from a strategic perspective, identifying weaknesses in our approach and suggesting improvements. The plan was set in motion on a Tuesday morning. I left my house with luggage, visibly departed in an airport shuttle, but actually checked into a hotel just 20 minutes from my home. Rachel set up command central in her apartment, monitoring my security cameras and keeping in touch with the plainclothes police officers parked discreetly near my property. For the first day, nothing happened. The second day passed similarly, with only a brief appearance by Madison slowly driving by the house around dusk. By the third day, I was beginning to think they had somehow discovered the trap. Then, at 10:17 a.m. on Thursday, the alerts began buzzing. First Madison and Derek arrived, parking down the street rather than in the driveway. They walked around the property, peering in windows and testing doors. Finding the locks changed, they made several phone calls. 30 minutes later, my mother arrived with Connor. More discussion in the driveway, more testing of doors. Then Connor disappeared around the back of the house. The rear camera caught him attempting to force open a window, just as he had during his late-night visit weeks earlier. They're making their move, Rachel texted. Police are ready. Should they intervene now? Not yet, I replied. Let's see how far they go. The answer came quickly. Connor managed to pry open a window that had been deliberately left with a faulty lock, part of our trap. The security system registered the breach, but was set to silent mode rather than triggering an audible alarm. One by one, they entered through the window Connor had opened. Rachel kept me updated via text as the police moved into position. Once all 4 family members were inside the house, clearly documented on the security cameras, the officers moved in. I arrived just as they were being escorted outside, their expressions transitioning from shock to anger to fear as they realized the depth of the trap they had fallen into. Madison spotted me first, her face contorting with rage. "You set us up," she screamed. "This is entrapment." "No, Madison, this is consequences," I replied calmly. "Breaking into my house once could perhaps be explained away. Doing it again, after explicit warnings and a restraining order, shows clear intent." The officers read them their rights while Catherine and Thomas arrived to document everything from a legal perspective. My mother switched tactics immediately, tears streaming down her face as she addressed the officers. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding. This is a family matter. My daughter is unwell, imagining conspiracies against her." "Save it, Mrs. Reynolds," the lead officer replied, unmoved. "We have video evidence of forced entry, and this isn't the first incident at this address." While they were being processed for arrest, Catherine approached me with final paperwork for my review. "These are the formal complaints, both criminal and civil. Once filed, there's no easy way to withdraw them. Are you absolutely certain this is the path you want to take?" I looked at my family. The people who should have supported and loved me unconditionally, who instead had tried to take everything from me through manipulation, lies, and now breaking and entering. I thought of Aunt Patricia's letter, her confidence in me, her warning not to let them make me doubt myself. "I'm certain," I said, signing the documents with a steady hand. They made their choices. Now they can live with the consequences. As they were led to separate police cars, Connor glanced back at me. Unlike the others, his expression wasn't angry or manipulative. He looked defeated, and perhaps for the first time, genuinely regretful. Our eyes met briefly before he was placed in the vehicle. That moment would return to me later, but in the aftermath of the arrests, I felt nothing but relief and vindication. The siege was over. My counterplan had worked. The evidence was irrefutable, the legal consequences unavoidable. After months of psychological warfare, I had finally won. Or so I thought. What I didn't realize then was that true victory wouldn't come through legal proceedings or restraining orders. It would come through something far more challenging and ultimately more rewarding, reclaiming not just my home and my reputation, but my understanding of what family truly means. The legal aftermath of the sting operation unfolded rapidly. My mother, Madison, and Derek were charged with multiple offenses: breaking and entering, violation of a restraining order, attempted conversion of property, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Connor, due to his visible hesitation on the security footage and his eventual cooperation with investigators, received lesser charges. Catherine had been right about one thing: the threat of serious criminal penalties was a powerful motivator. Within days, their attorney was contacting us about a potential settlement. They'll agree to permanent restraining orders, signed admissions of wrongdoing, and legally binding commitments never to challenge Patricia's will again, Catherine informed me after a preliminary discussion. In exchange, they're asking for reduced charges and no jail time. "What do you think?" I asked, torn between wanting justice and wanting the nightmare to end. "The admissions of wrongdoing are valuable. They'll make any future claims against you virtually impossible to pursue. The reduced charges would still result in probation and community service, possibly restitution payments to you for emotional distress and legal fees." After careful consideration, I agreed to the settlement terms with one additional condition: mandatory counseling for all of them, with proof of attendance required as part of their probation. It wasn't about punishment at that point, but ensuring they addressed the underlying issues that had led to their behavior. The settlement was finalized within weeks. My mother, Madison, and Derek each received 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and orders to pay restitution covering my legal expenses. Connor received 1 year of probation and community service. All agreed to permanent restraining orders and counseling requirements. The legal resolution brought relief, but also a profound emptiness. I had won, but at what cost? The last threads connecting me to my blood relatives had been severed completely. The family I grew up with, however dysfunctional, was truly gone. It's okay to grieve even though they hurt you, my therapist, Dr. Winters, reminded me during our session after the settlement. You're mourning the family you wished you had, not the people they actually are. Those words resonated deeply. I was grieving not for the loss of my actual family, but for the loss of the possibility that they might someday become the family I needed. The settlement had made that possibility more remote than ever. Healing began with reclaiming my space. I hired contractors to renovate the house, changing wall colors, updating fixtures, and rearranging rooms. Each alteration helped exorcise the negative energy my family had brought into Aunt Patricia's beautiful home. I planted a memorial garden in the backyard with Patricia's favorite flowers, creating a peaceful retreat where I could feel connected to her memory. As my home transformed, so did my social circle. Rachel, Thomas, and several other friends who had supported me through the ordeal became regular visitors. Sunday dinners became a tradition, the dining room filled with laughter and genuine affection. Mrs. Finley, initially racked with guilt over her unwitting role in my family's schemes, became a welcome addition to these gatherings. Patricia would be so pleased, she told me one evening as we shared tea on the porch. She always wanted this house to be filled with love and joy. Professional recovery took longer. The rumors my family had spread affected my client relationships and reputation within the industry. Martin supported me throughout, assigning me to team projects until I could rebuild my individual client base. Gradually, through consistent professionalism and results, my standing recovered. 6 months after the settlement, life had developed a new normal. The legal drama was behind me, the house felt truly mine, and both my personal and professional relationships were thriving. Then came the letter from Connor. It arrived via Catherine's office, respecting the restraining order's prohibition on direct contact. Handwritten on simple lined paper, it was unlike the manipulative communications I'd received from my family in the past. Caitlin, I know you have every reason to throw this letter away unread. I wouldn't blame you if you did. But I hope you'll give me these few minutes of your time. First, I want to say clearly and without excuses, I am sorry. What we did to you was wrong. Not just the break-ins and the lies about the house, but the years before that. The way we treated you when you wouldn't give Madison the money. The things we said. All of it was wrong. I've been in counseling for 4 months now. It was court-ordered, but it's become something I value. My therapist has helped me recognize patterns in our family that I never questioned before. The manipulation. The conditional love. The way Mom pitted us against each other, with Madison as the golden child and you as the scapegoat. None of this excuses my actions. I made choices. I participated in hurting you. That responsibility is mine alone. You should also know that I have a son. His name is Lucas, and he's 2 years old. His mother and I aren't together, but I'm trying to be a good father. The kind of father who takes responsibility, who tells the truth, who breaks harmful patterns instead of perpetuating them. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a relationship. I just wanted you to know that at least one member of this family recognizes the harm we caused and is trying to change, with respect and regret. Connor, I read the letter several times, emotions shifting with each reading. Skepticism, anger,
Curiosity.
hope. I discussed it with Dr. Winters during our next session, unsure how to respond or whether to respond at all. What does your intuition tell you? She asked. That it might be genuine. Connor always seemed the most uncomfortable with the family dynamics, even while participating in them. He was young when the patterns were established, more influenced by Mom and Madison than I realized. And what are you afraid of if you respond? Being manipulated again. Opening a door that should stay closed. Inviting chaos back into my life when I've finally found peace. Dr. Winters nodded. Those are valid concerns. What might a cautious response look like? One that acknowledges his effort without committing to anything further. After much consideration, I sent a brief reply through Catherine's office. Connor, thank you for your letter. I appreciate the apology and your commitment to counseling. Breaking family patterns is difficult, but important work. Asterisk, I'm not ready for direct contact or a relationship, but I acknowledge your efforts to take responsibility. I hope you continue on this path, especially as you raise your son. Asterisk, Caitlin, asterisk, it was a small opening. Nothing more. But it felt like the right balance between self-protection and recognition of the possibility of change. Meanwhile, life continued to evolve in positive directions. I was promoted at work, taking on more responsibility and mentoring newer agents. The garden I'd planted in Patricia's memory flourished, attracting butterflies and hummingbirds she would have loved. My friendship circle expanded, bringing diverse perspectives and experiences into my life. A year after the settlement, I established the Patricia Reynolds Foundation, a small nonprofit dedicated to helping young adults who had been estranged from toxic families. The foundation provided housing assistance, counseling services, and community connections for those who, like me, had to create family from scratch. I think this is the best possible use of Patricia's legacy, Mr. Harmon said when I shared the news. Creating something beautiful and healing from a painful situation. News of the foundation reached my mother and Madison, who predictably attempted to portray it as further evidence of my vindictiveness toward family. Their efforts gained no traction. By then, the truth about their actions was well established in our community. Their influence had waned as they dealt with the consequences of their choices. Connor, in contrast, sent a donation to the foundation through his attorney, along with a note of support for its mission. It was another small gesture, another hint that perhaps one branch of my family tree might eventually bear healthier fruit. The most unexpected development came 18 months after the break-in, when Mrs. Finley introduced me to her grandson Jack, a doctoral student visiting for the summer. Our initial conversations about architecture, his field, and real estate mine, evolved into friendship and, eventually, romance. Jack's warmth, integrity, and genuine interest in people reminded me that trust was still possible, even after betrayal. When Jack eventually met Connor, the only family member I had cautiously allowed back into my life, with strict boundaries and only occasional contact, the two men found surprising common ground. Both were committed to breaking cycles of dysfunction in their families. Both valued honesty and accountability. Both believed in the possibility of change, however difficult the process. As I look back now on the journey from that shocking day, when I found my family attempting to move into my house to where I am today, I'm struck by how differently things turned out than anyone could have predicted. The house that became a battleground has transformed into a true sanctuary, not just for me, but for the chosen family I've built. What my blood relatives tried to take by force has become something they could never have appreciated anyway, a home filled with genuine love, mutual respect, and unconditional support. Madison and Derek eventually divorced, their relationship unable to withstand the financial and legal aftermath of their actions. My mother moved to Arizona, apparently telling new acquaintances a revised version of family history in which I barely exist. Some patterns never change. Connor's journey has been different. After completing his counseling and probation, he secured steady employment and has become a devoted father to Lucas. Our relationship remains cautious. Text messages on birthdays, occasional coffee meetings in public places, always with clear boundaries. It's not the close sibling bond some might envision, but it's honest and respectful, which is more than I once thought possible. Mrs. Finley has become the grandmother figure I never had, sharing Patricia's stories and creating new ones together. Jack and I are discussing marriage, approaching the prospect with the careful consideration of two people who understand both the value and fragility of family bonds. The Patricia Reynolds Foundation has grown beyond my initial vision, now helping dozens of young adults annually who find themselves in situations similar to mine. Each success story, each person who builds a healthy life after family trauma, honors my aunt's memory in ways that feel deeply right. If I've learned anything from this experience, it's that family isn't defined by blood or legal documents. It's created through choices, daily choices to be honest, supportive, and kind, to respect boundaries, to give without expecting return, to love without manipulation. My family tried to tell me I didn't have a family, then attempted to use family as justification for taking what was mine. The irony is that their actions led me to discover what family truly means and to build one stronger than they could ever imagine. Have you experienced the pain of family betrayal or the joy of creating a chosen family? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing it with others who might need to hear that healing is possible even after the deepest betrayals. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember that true family is built on love and respect, not obligation or blood. Like this video if you believe in karma and justice, and subscribe for more real stories about family dynamics, betrayal, and ultimately, healing and growth. Until next time, take care of yourselves and choose your family wisely.